afternoon.
Yeah.
Hold on.
When I started putting this presentation together, I couldn't help but recall the first time I did 30 years ago, 31 years ago. And so I took a look at the membership list at that time and wondered how many were still here today. I think the only person that is here today that was then possibly in the room was Jeff Boswell. But I do think, and I compared notes, Jeff, I don't know if your family's had continuous involvement in the Harrisburg Rotary since 1954, which my family did. My grandfather started in 1954 and this as a member of this club, and my father in 1960. So perhaps I have you on that count. But you may not remember my presentation, so I'll start fresh.
We weren't born. Four-way test doesn't
I spent about 40 years in the technology industry after graduating from college, and then moved to, then retired this past year. I moved to the Harrisburg area in 1991 after spending a lot of time in Boston, where I met my wife. She was in the medical product sales industry, and then she switched her territories to move to the Harrisburg area, supporting our marriage. This picture brings us forward to about 3 years ago. And it's one of my favorite pictures because it shows this connection with Boston that our family has had for a long, long period of time. Catherine, at this point, was a pediatric palliative care nurse. She had been working for a large regional healthcare provider as a nurse. She went to college again when she was 40, graduated again, 47, and then, but stepped away from that work role with the pressures of staffing shortages post-COVID. The middle daughter, Annie, is our oldest. She was in her first year in business school, again in Boston. Annie at this point works in Nashville lives in Nashville with her fiance, guy by the name of Jack McDermott, a Boston native by the sounds of it and by the reality of it. She's sort of a cross between the two of us. She's a vice president of quality assurance for a large regional healthcare company in the rural South. And then my youngest daughter, similar, Justin, to your background, works for Amazon. After graduating from college, she had been involved as a contributing editor for a large company, and then shifted over to Amazon roughly about 6 months after this picture was taken. She continues to be there at this point, actually headed out to Seattle tomorrow. She lives with her husband in State College, who's a resident or beginning his 4th year of medical school this year. Beginning in 91, I had 3 different roles, primarily within Morefield, and started out in the data networking part of the business, started that business actually. When I became president in 96, I became president in 96, and then on my father's retirement in 1999, became the CEO. And it was at that retirement dinner for my father that a member of this club, former member of this club, spoke. He happened to be on our board of directors, Bill Alexander. If you want to change the slide. And this slide helps to focus a little bit about my Act Two. And the comments that he made at the time helped me think about my own transition sometime later. You likely heard these statistics, but his talk specifically focused on the 400,000 family businesses that were started, like ours, in 1945. His talk went something like that there were 10,000 of them left in 1998, the year before this presentation took place. And there was study of why these businesses failed, why it went from 400,000 to 10,000 over that period of time, nearly 50 years. And basically, the study analyzed why that happens. A third of the companies, when it broke it down, a third of the companies that were involved died with the owner's feet first. In other words, the owner stayed in the business too long. The second tranche basically didn't trust the next generation. The specifics of that were that they meddled in the business and they came back into the business and they couldn't get out. The owner couldn't get out. And the next third, a variety of challenges in the operation, industry related. You do that long enough, 400,000 gets to 10,000. So about 12 years later, when I started the process of my own succession planning with another board member from this club, Connie Siegel, I had been with our on our board for about 8 years at that point. I thought about those comments. Today, and about 3 years ago, I stepped back as president into a different role, and last year stepped away as CEO. And while I remain as board chair, I think the business is in great shape. Long interested in many of the dimensions of family business. Now, I will say our current president, comp sci engineer from Penn State, very accomplished guy, been with our company for about 20 years, surrounded by a great management team, an owner, and also on the board of directors. But in addition to that, he has he and the rest of our management team represent about 40% of the ownership of the company. So it's now transitioning and in the process of transitioning from the family. In the not distant future, we'll complement that with our employees. If you want to shift on this slide a little bit. Long interested in the many dimensions of corporate governance and succession planning. When I stepped back from the organization, I felt it was appropriate to continue my interest in this area. And for me, the High Center associated with Elizabethtown College was a perfect fit. And I don't know, when I was talking with Fred earlier, perhaps you've been familiar with this a little bit, but the organization was started in 1994. It's a not-for-profit. While it's located at Elizabethtown College, it's only there by proximity, and that's where the organization started. But today, the members represent roughly 250 family businesses and private companies, represent roughly about 40,000 employees regionally, and $10 billion in sales for the 250 members. Some of the large companies that you'd know, Her Foods and Shadler Yesco, for example, have multiple members. Most target the 15 to 20 million, $30 million range. It also serves roughly about 50 not-for-profits in a model I'll describe a little bit further. But the key issue here is, and for example, WITF and Capital Region United Way are members of the organization. Largely, it's focused on the leaders and the leaders' conversation, owners and key executives, and driving education and awareness and the application of those services to the leaders. It does so through a couple key things. Education is largely a speaker series, which you may be familiar with. Fred talked about attending an event with a speaker that writes a book and then talks about the implications of that book. This year, Patrick Lencioni, for example, talks about dysfunction as a team. This year, George Bush is going to be speaking, but there are other speaker series that are involved. I'm most involved in sort of the awareness piece of it. I coach and mentor roughly about, facilitate 4 of 40 peer groups. The peer groups are roughly 10 members, non-competitive members, of key executives or CEOs. And it's a place for confidential conversation. And then with our partners, some local organizations, as well as some in this room, about the application of that into their business, making sure that it continues to work. And that's the vicious circle the not-for-profit's been involved in for years. So bottom line, my Act Two is a work I enjoy. I also will just sort of say, I very much appreciate the strength of the service that's been part of Rotary for years. And I appreciate all of your support here. So thank you so much.